Hi everyone, welcome to Arukah Living, where we learn about medical machinery work. We also learn about organic farming and a little bit of country living as well. And today I want to emphasize two basic points, and that is covering of your soil, making beds and covering of the soil, and then also the sunlight, what sunlight is helping us in the garden. But just a few other principles before we get to that. When I spoke about manures and using it in your compost, I just want you to be careful not to use just any manure. If you have your own cows, your own chickens, you know what you're feeding them, you know what you're giving them, those will be good manures. If they walk around, they have good food to eat. But do not take manures that come from feed lots where the cattle are fed so that they can go to the slaughter. Don't take those manures because they power feed them hormones and all kinds of other things and a lot of salts, and you don't want that in your garden. And then there are, if you want to use manures in your garden, my suggestion is first go through the compost process because it breaks down there so that the plants can use the nutrients. Don't put it straight into your garden. If you put it straight into your garden on your beds, then you know you're going to use those beds maybe in 3 months or 6 months from now. You cannot use it immediately. It's not very good for the garden. And on the worms, I want to show you here, I'm using a lot of covering, my fruit trees in my beds as well. The reason why I use the covering is because it keeps the moist inside for the trees, for the plants. And here I put my compost first and then cover it with grass, a nice thick layer around my trees. And that promotes the microorganisms to work in the soil, earthworms to come here. I even put earthworms in here. And so this soil, over a period of time, becomes fertile. The plant can take up the nutrients. And there's different farming methods in the world today. There's hydroponics. Hydroponics is when they use a water medium to plant your plants so the roots are in water. So you have to build a big system with pumps, pumping the water, feeding the plants in the water. That's an artificial system. And then you get aquaponics, where they have fish in a dam, and then they combine it with hydroponics, and then the fish excretion they pump through, and that feeds the plants in this artificial system. And then you can have just fish in a dam, where you can get your nutrients from that water and put it in your garden on the ground. That is also as good as using earthworms. My choice is earthworms just because it's much easier for me. I can control that, and if you have the space and the time, you can do the fish. Is also very good nutritious food for your plants as well. So try to cover, use mulching on your gardens and on your fruit trees as well. Now I'm going to show you how to do some of the beds and how to cover it also with netting so that it helps and protects your plants against insects and other organisms. I use a lot of raised beds for some of my plants and my vegetables, and these raised beds are full of earthworms. I just put compost in here. When I started, I put about 30 centimeters of compost in here, start planting my plants, and when the harvest is finished, I continue putting my compost on here. So it starts filling up, eventually over a few years, fills up this raised bed. But I want to also show you that you can use a simple system that you can cover also your raised beds against a lot of things like hail, like bugs and frost. And it's just very easy to do for me anyway. What I use is these poles, which we call droppers, and some poly pipe. So then I just take the netting and just cover it with the netting. And here I have a mini netting house that can protect my plants. Now I'm going to show you how you can do that very easily. These beds I've made for my strawberries, and I would like to cover my strawberries for birds that come in, bugs that eat my strawberries. But before I do that, these are beds that are raw material. That means it's raw manure from cows and from horses, and because I'm expecting to plant in 3 months to 6 months. Don't put raw things on here and immediately plant in your beds. This is going to break down and make the soil fertile. But if you want to use your beds immediately, then you use the third stage of your compost. When your compost is already decomposed, then you also make these beds and put a layer of 10 to 15 centimeters on there, and you can plant your plants, water your plants, water your seeds, and will grow. And you can also use this method of covering in those beds. Then you can plant immediately, no problem. But I want to show you something here. I use these droppers, which is about 10 millimeters to 15 millimeters, and the poly pipe, which is 15 millimeters size, grade 6 from an agricultural shop that I bought it, or any irrigation shop. And I just heat them on both sides of my bed. And because you get these things in different lengths, you get the droppers in different lengths, you can make it as high as you want or as low as you want. My strawberries grow low, so I don't need it too high. And this fits wonderfully in there and in there. And you have your loops. And you put them about 1 meter apart, and then take your covering and put it over your netting covering. And what type of netting covering do you use? I use white because it reflects light and it needs sunlight. Your plants need sunlight. There are green netting in the shops. There are blue netting in the shops and black netting in the shops. But please, if you can, use white netting, 30% shade, because you need sunlight for your plants. And when you make your beds, please, most of your vegetables, they like full sunlight, especially in winter. The sunlight helps with the forming of the chlorophyll within the plant. And sunlight is very important. The more you expose your plants to sunlight, the better and stronger they will grow. In God's word, it says that Jesus is our righteousness. In Jeremiah 23 verse 6, He's the one covering us. And in Malachi 4 verse 2, it says that those that fear the Lord, the Son of Righteousness, will arise with healing in His wings. Just as the plants, we need the covering of the righteousness of Christ. And with that covering comes the rays of the Son of God with His healing in His wings in our lives. This is the gospel in the garden.